Welcome to Salute to the Years, where my family and I discuss everything Disney, from parks, food, and rides to travel tips, movies, and more. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Salute to the Ears. I am your host, Jeremy Simon, and again with me is my wonderful, lovely wife, Erica.
Hello.
And it's getting to be that time of year down in Disney. Things are getting closer to the 50th.
Yeah.
We're starting to see more things, more of these statues coming out, which are kind of fun to see. Some of them are kind of surprising me.
Yeah,
Right.
there's been the ones that we knew would debut. Big
Right.
names that we knew would debut, but some of the smaller ones, I'm really kind of shocked by that they ended up choosing some of the particular ones.
Yeah,
but
like for me, Cheshire Cat and Mad Hatter both kind of surprised me.
Mad Hatter doesn't, but
Yeah,
the
they seem to
cat,
know red teacups, but yeah, the cat definitely does.
I don't
Yeah,
know. We haven't seen. I don't think we've seen any princesses yet.
nope, no princesses.
So be very interesting to see how that plays out.
Right. Yeah, and we got a sneak peek of some of the merch coming out too. Kind of doing it different than what I was expecting. They're actually having actual 50th merch coming out with it, except it says 50th all over it.
Right.
And then they're also having retro stuff come out.
Oh yeah, I do like the retro stuff. It's not. It still feels current.
It does.
Like it still feels like they could have just released it, and we would have been like, "Oh, that's cool."
Look at that, yeah. But I like some of that. But I just wasn't expecting it. And then also this week, it's almost your favorite time of the year down there. They're starting to bring out their Halloween stuff.
Yes.
Some of the bunting and banners and pumpkins started coming out.
I actually saw a account that makes different home decor signs and things and merchandise that one of her things said, instead of "I'm so glad I live in a world where there are Octobers," it says, "I'm so glad that we live in a world where there are Mickey pumpkins." And I was like, yes. I need this. Mickey pumpkins for life. And, it's just, we love fall. And I will tell you, though, the other thing that I'm super excited about, and I'm really sad because I have not been able to get the reel on Instagram to work for it and post correctly, but we got a first really in-depth look at the Galactic Star Cruiser and the new immersive experience opening in 2022.
Right. Along with what the rooms were going to be like. Like, we already had an idea of what the studios were going to be like, but now we know that there's also going to be a 1-bedroom and 2-bedroom suite with it.
Yeah, and just, you get a lot with it. I didn't realize that you were getting food. I didn't realize that, a lot of the experiences and things were included. I didn't realize how, inclusive that 2-day stay was actually going to be. So I'm really excited to see how this plays out.
Yeah, no, there is a lot to it, but it is definitely pricey.
It is, but you really are getting a lot out of that for that part of your stay.
Yeah. I think it's one of those things, though. I think you're going to have to really enjoy Star Wars and that whole universe in order to be able to tuck yourself into it. Because you can almost go on a 7-day cruise for the same price as...
Yeah, but I do. I think that's who it's appealing to. It's appealing to those people who are nerds like us that...
Right.
You're not quite the Star Wars fan that I grew up with. So I grew up in a Star Wars / Star Trek household, definitely raised by a nerd, and I say that with love. This is something that I've grown up with. And so, seeing it in Galaxy's Edge and play out that way has been so, so cool, and that's been so amazing. But to actually have that kind of immersive for a few moments, to actually feel like you actually left here and went into that reality, is going to be really cool.
Yeah. No, I can think of plenty of people that I know that would like it. For me, yeah, I would like it, but I'm going to have to think about it.
Yeah. But I think you would enjoy it if somebody else paid for it.
Yeah, probably. I'd enjoy most things if somebody else paid for it. But yeah, it's been kind of another busy week. It's every week seems to be busy. Oh, and then masks back indoors and on rides.
Yeah, it's a whole thing everywhere right now.
It's not what any of us wanted to hear. It's kind of a step backwards, but we'll see. Hopefully, we'll get through it here in these next few weeks. And I got a feeling masks are going to be back off the early part of the 50th.
Yeah, I really do think that Disney's going to try to do everything they can to find a way to be able to eliminate them again, especially for those who are vaccinated, to eliminate them again by the 50th, by October 1st.
Right. So, but speaking of October 1st and Halloween and some of our favorite times, it kind of takes us to maybe planning a trip.
Well, we'd actually talked a couple months ago. We started talking and thinking through, hey, could we potentially take a trip in August? And it's not happening. We kind of looked at it, and one of the things that ended up happening for me was decision paralysis.
Yeah.
And right now, just the state of things in general, there's so many decisions that we're having to make on a daily basis just because of the state of the world. That trying to plan and make decisions a couple months in advance, and not knowing, we had a few unknown things that were happening in our life that we were just like, is that going to work? Is it not? Like timing wise, and it just became decision paralysis. And we started talking about it, and we were talking about it over coffee the other day of like how many decisions you actually have to make right now in order to plan a Disney World vacation. Now, we have friends who are Disney travel agents, and they will help you plan that out, and they will help you make a lot of those decisions. But some of them you end up just having to make yourself.
Right.
You know, some of it is just like, they'll tell you, okay, you can pick A, B, or C, and you have to still pick. And for a lot of us right now, I think that's very overwhelming.
Yeah, and it's big decisions from budget and time to go to little small things in the park, but will kind of change your day as you go, as you're there.
Yeah.
I think the first one you really have to sit down and really figure out is budget.
Yeah, I mean, and it's so hard because, you know, we're still right now, not every resort is open.
No, but we're getting close.
We're getting close. We're almost there, but not every resort is open. And you don't have the same perks
right.
staying on property that you used to. It used to, you know, there used to be a piece of that, you know, that you could work within your budget and say, okay, well, I know I want to stay on property, so I'm going to fit within this budget, and here's what my budget is, and that's how I'm going to stay there. But now it's a little more open-ended.
Right. And then without the dining plan, that definitely leaves the food part kind of open-ended.
So now you have to budget for that. So instead of having this kind of, you know, we've talked about this before on here, that all-inclusiveness of having the dining plan and staying on a property and not having to rent a car and having a lot of those things kind of figured out for you from Disney, we're now having to make those decisions ourselves. And for us personally, that was a big factor, was like, okay, we're not going to be able to go and potentially hit every park.
Right.
And so budget-wise, we had to limit our days, and thinking about limiting our days. And then it was like, well, how do we do what we want to do with this budget in this time frame?
Right. It was, when we do a dining plan, then we eat places we wouldn't normally eat. And I think for us and for Jackson and Brooklyn, that's become part of it.
Yeah.
Getting to eat at some of these places we normally wouldn't get to eat. And if we're just eating quick service all the time, it wouldn't be the same.
Okay, so let's walk through. Let's say we're planning, you know, we're kind of looking at a trip possibly later this year, early next year for Brooklyn's birthday. And so, you know, you start with budget, and, you know, big questions in that, right, are where are you staying? Mm-hmm. How are you getting there?
Right.
And are you renting a car or not?
Yep.
Right. So like, how are you getting around Disney?
Right.
And so that plays into the where are you staying?
Right. Absolutely.
Because, you know, if your main goal of going is Magic Kingdom, and if you can afford to stay on a monorail line,
right,
and are staying at Magic Kingdom Resort.
Yep, I think that's the big one because you can also just take the ferry over
Just
from
take the
Wilderness.
ferry.
Yeah.
You can. I mean, there's lots of options there, but like if your budget will allow you to stay and your main goal is Magic Kingdom, that plays into like, hey, I'm not going to rent a car because the only place we're going is Magic Kingdom, and Disney has options for me to get there. Great. So I mean, there's all of these like breakdown decisions in that you have to make.
Right.
Now for us, we have to fly in,
Yeah,
and I mean, we could drive.
we could drive. 18 hours is a long time in the car.
Probably kill you before then.
Yeah.
The whole thing of like you can't. So we have to fly, and when we look at flights, you have to play into, okay, do I want to get up at the butt crack of dawn and have a 6:15 a.m. flight and be exhausted, but potentially have the rest of the day to go do stuff?
Right.
But I'm exhausted already from the time we get there. Or do you take a later flight and get there later, not have as much time?
Right.
That's a travel day only. You don't have time to go do stuff. Maybe you don't even have time to go eat outside of your resort.
Right.
That's, like it factors into like,
Right.
hey, are we just having this be a travel day? Or are we just
Yep.
like, when are we flying? What flights are available?
Right. And I think the other part of that you have to look at with the travel is what are you doing on your way home? Are you going to have time to go to any of the parks before you come home? Because if not, then, I mean, typically we try to
We try to take the late flight
the
home.
latest flight we can home so that we can go do, if there's a park that's more of a half-day park, we'll go do that day. Or if there's one we want to go to just real fast, that's what we'll go and do. That's what you have to kind of weigh in, though. And, it also matters, like, how old your kids are, if your kids are going.
Yeah. Because, I mean, if you have littles, you have to factor in, your time of where, like, how are you going to spend your days?
Right.
Right? So that factors into your budget of, well, how many parks are we doing?
Right.
How many places are we going? And this goes for Disneyland, too, as
Right.
well as Disney World. I mean, we focus mostly on Disney World because that's been
That's
our
what we
primary
know.
home. But, like, even when you're going out to Disneyland, you have to make those decisions. Well, where am I staying? What is my budget? How many times are we going to the park? What else are we doing? Where else are we going? That's another factor. Do you want to go to Universal? Do you want to go spend a day in International Drive? Do you want to
Right. There's a
go
lot of
drive
other
out
things.
to the
Yep.
beach? Like, there's even just the aspect of like, how long am I going? What is the budget? How am I getting there? Where am I staying? Those like big
Right.
core things. You have a lot of decisions to make within there.
Yeah. And then if you're going after the new year, now you have to figure out, okay, how am I getting from the airport to the hotel?
Right,
'Cause
because
there's
now you no longer have Magical Express. However, you do have the option there to purchase a ticket from that same bus service that was
Mirrors,
providing
yeah.
it for
and
Magical
And
Express.
they just put out prices, and it's like $40 round trip per adult.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's not terrible, but it's an added expense and something you
Right.
have to factor into your budget. Or do you rent a car and pay for the parking fees at your resort if you stay on property?
Yeah.
Some of the ones off property don't charge you, some do.
Right.
Depending on the length of your stay, depending on
But if you're staying off property, then you have to pay for parking when you go into the parks. So
Right, so
You're,
then you
you're
gotta
paying
pay.
for parking somewhere.
so it's like you got to deal with paying for parking and the rental car price. Or do you pay Mears and use their shuttle service?
Yeah.
And sometimes that takes a long time.
Or get a car service. Ubers are iffy right now.
Yeah.
People are having a harder time down there getting Ubers. So, I mean, it's a way you can try to go, but
There
it's,
are some just regular like rental like car shuttle services
car
though
services, yeah.
that I mean
yeah,
we could do all of us for about $150.
yeah,
And that's like we could roll up in a limo if we wanted.
yeah. Oh, that'd make Brooklyn happy.
I would make Brooklyn happy. It's one of those things where it's like you have a lot of decisions that you have to make on that. So let's say you've made a decision on your budget.
Right.
You know where you want to stay. You know how long you're going to stay for. You've got to now you've got to figure out like
Yeah.
let's say you're staying on property, you're
Right.
not renting a car.
Right.
Okay?
One of the other things that can affect like the price of your hotel is when you're going.
Yes.
Peak time versus off peak. That's a big one.
Midweek versus being there on a weekend. Weekend
Right.
rates are still higher than
Absolutely,
during the
they
week,
are.
just like every other hotel.
So I know typically like if we're going to stay for 4 nights or whatever, we usually try to avoid the weekend.
Yeah.
just for that reason.
Well, that reason, and the parks are usually more crowded on the weekends
Right.
than during the week anyway.
And then you also have to look to see if there's any events going on, any like Run Disney events, any sports events for youth.
Yep.
All those things.
Big conventions for different,
Add into your crowds
organizations. Yeah.
and what's going on. So all those things can add into your budget, but trying to figure out when to go. And the other part is, are you comfortable taking your kids out of school, if you have kids, to go?
Yeah. That's been a big factor for us in planning right now. It's been one of the things that's been the hardest, is, we have older kids, we have teens, and taking them out of school means that they aren't just missing some worksheets that they can make up or stuff that you could potentially help them with. It means that they are missing, if you try to go take a couple extra days during a break time that they have, they're missing finals, or our kids both play sports.
Right.
One plays for our high school, so it's like you have to factor in that schedule.
Right. And if they have days off from school, that means everybody else has days off from school. And it's probably going to be, prices are going to be a little bit higher, and it's going to be a little bit more crowded.
And that's what we ran into when we went in October of 2019, is that it was a big fall weekend for several states, for kind of mid-quarter. And we ran into a lot of other families who were doing the same thing we were, of like trying to miss the least amount of days possible for their kids from school and still make a trip happen. And so it ended up being a busier week than we were anticipating originally. And things like spring break, Christmas break, those are always packed. Those are peak times.
Thanksgiving.
Like Thanksgiving. September tends to be your lower timeline.
This year, September is probably going to be really low, because if you're going to go in September, then you might as well wait until October just because of the 50th.
Well, yes and no. I mean,
if you don't care about seeing the 50th stuff and some of the new rides and some of the new booths and some of that stuff, then September is a fantastic time to go, because prices are going to be a little bit lower and crowds are going to be lower.
Right.
But you're not going to get all the new stuff that
No, but I really do think the way, you have the new merchandise coming out already. New merchandise is going to be available starting on the August 12th.
Right.
You're going to have, the castle's already decorated, so you get all of those lovely photos. The big things that you'll miss as far as that are any of the entertainment stuff.
Right.
You will still get to see, though,
Happily
Ever After. That's a big one for me, and probably the biggest disappointment of the fact that we will likely not make it down there until after the 50th has started.
Right. So, yeah, you will still get to see that. So, but I guess once you figure out your budget, when you're going, where you're staying, all that kind of stuff, next thing you really have to figure out is the order of the parks you're going to go to, because now you have to have reservations, and it doesn't look like that's going away.
Yeah, and I don't think it's going away anytime soon, which on one hand irritates me, and on the other hand I understand, because when we would plan out trips, because of the way the FastPass system was prior to 2020, I would literally have like this matrix. I would have like Post-it notes and a piece of paper, and I would have it laid out of like, okay, well, we want to go to this park on this day because they have these extra magic hours and they have this, like, and these are the things that we want to do, and I could get a fast pass this day for this ride, and so we would kind of plan out, and we knew we were going to Hollywood Studios first, then we were going to Magic Kingdom, then we were going to Animal Kingdom, then we were going to Epcot. Like we already had our days planned out, so that for us hasn't necessarily super changed, but we weren't locked into that. Outside of the we had Fast Pass, or we'd have dining reservations and things like that, but those could be changed.
Right.
And so it's a little trickier now with the, okay, well, I got to make these reservations, and our trip isn't for however long out.
Right.
I mean, because right now you can make reservations.
You can make park reservations like pretty much as soon as you get your tickets.
Right. So, I mean, that's insane. You know, I mean, to have to plan that out and be essentially...
Yeah.
Or, you're at least risking being locked into that, and there not being availability for reservations for a different park that day.
One good thing I have been seeing as of late, as of increased capacity, is they're not really having the sold out dates anymore.
No, we have very few sold out dates.
So hopefully what that will mean is if, say, hey, I'm scheduled to go Magic Kingdom on a Tuesday, but you know what? I didn't get that Rise boarding pass on Monday. Maybe I want to switch them around.
Yeah.
Hopefully we'll be able to do that.
Yeah.
Because that you're not completely locked out of certain parks on certain days.
But is that happening? Is that happening right now with like the day of, like, and being able to change day before, day of, or is that just that we're still seeing openings that are green far out?
Everything's green far out right now.
It's just one of those things where it's like you have to choose. Now, I feel like you're a little bit more locked into it, and that is one of those pieces that gives me anxiety paralysis.
Right.
Yes, figuring out my whole little matrix of like dining reservations and fast passes and extra magic hours and all of that, and like sorting through all of that was hard, but I never felt locked into it. And that's the only thing I don't like about the reservation system is even if you're not actually locked into it, even if there is availability to change your reservation, it doesn't necessarily feel that way.
Right.
And so that's one of those anxiety paralysis.
No, it's just another step of something that you have to do. It used to be like, oh, well, maybe we won't go to Magic Kingdom today, we'll go to Hollywood. Now you have to actually go in and change your reservation and do all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And did I do it right? And
right. There's steps to it. And yes, again, if you have a Disney travel agent, especially one who's local to you, and somebody that you can work with, those are things that they can do for you, and helping change those and like adjusting that stuff for you, which is amazing. But not everybody utilizes that. The other question is, are you going to park hop? Park hopping is extra on your ticket. Still, it's not necessarily a guarantee the way that it was before. Again, we could decide, hey, yeah, we did the things that we wanted to do in Hollywood Studios during the morning. We're going to go ahead and go to Magic Kingdom and just go whenever we decided to go. Yep. There wasn't a like, oh, well, you got to wait until after 1 o'clock and you've got to call this number and you've got to make sure there's room. There's just more steps right now.
It is. Yeah, there are more steps. And for some people, they may try to take this next step before they make their park reservations. Some may do it after, but doing your advanced dinner reservations.
Yes.
You can only do those 60 days out.
Yeah.
And you need to pretty much get on it 60 days out at this point because the really popular ones are gone.
Now, when does that open? I'm trying to remember. Does that open at 6 a.m. Eastern or does that open at
6
midnight?
6 a.m. Eastern.
It's 6 a.m. Okay,
yep.
So 6 a.m. Eastern. Again, really nice way to have a Disney travel agent in your pocket, to be able to do this for you because they will get up at 6 a.m. and try to get you those dining reservations. If you know where you want to eat, but there are some of those bigger places that they're just 2 minutes in, they're booked.
Gone. Like, be our guest. Tough one to get. Everybody wants to go. Homecoming. Yeah, that sucker's tough. I don't know how to get that one. I tried and couldn't get it. But yeah, some of those sit down places, especially in the parks, fill up fast.
Yeah.
It's the ones that remain open are typically open for a reason. Other than Skipper's Canteen, like that one gets good reviews, and there's always openings. I don't get it.
Yeah.
But Tony's is open for a reason.
Yeah.
It sounds good idea, good plan.
It's great in theory. It really is. Execution is lacking.
Yeah, not good. Olive Garden.
Yeah.
Because that'd be the best way to explain it.
Okay, so now let's say you have made all these decisions up until now. You know what your budget is. Mm-hmm. You know when you're going.
Yep.
Right. You've decided on time of year that you want to go. Our favorite, like we said, is going in the fall. We like the weather. Right. We like the atmosphere. Mm-hmm. Typically non-celebration years.
Yeah.
It's a little bit quieter September, October than some other times of the year. We really do like that. We try to avoid the summer. We know that's not possible for everybody. To avoid the summer and especially with kids. Mm-hmm. But so when you want to go, what your budget is, where you want to stay, how you're getting around.
Yep.
You have your park reservations.
Mm-hmm.
You get your dining reservations.
Okay. So now we're going to fast forward and we're actually at the parks.
So now we're there. Now our vacation is here, or we're getting ready for our vacation. It's like next week.
Yeah.
Now what?
Yep. So some of the things you have to start thinking about are you going to rope drop?
Only if you get up and get the coffee first.
Yes. I always get the coffee first. Are you going to rope drop? Are you going to rope drop at all the parks? Are you going to stay late at the parks for fireworks and closing it down?
How are you doing meals? Are you doing quick service meals? Are you doing sit down meals? That factors into your day. And as far as the timeline, if you're doing quick service meals, they're all mobile order right now. There's no real way with a true quick service meal to walk up and order your food.
There are select ones now that will take or were taking cash before we went back to masks indoor. Mm-hmm. To where if you went up and talked to them at the door and said, hey, I really want to pay cash and not do mobile order because I have a flip phone or whatever reason you can't do it, then they would allow you to do it.
Right.
But I don't know, maybe going back to strictly mobile order. But if you're going to do mobile orders and you're going to in the parks, know where you're doing those mobile orders, what restaurants you want to eat at before you go in. It's if you're coming in and it's 9 a.m., then you need to put that mobile order in if you want to eat lunch anywhere in between like 12 and 1.
Yeah. If you want to eat at peak times, you basically need to plan for at least a couple of hours ahead of that, going ahead and putting in that mobile order, and especially for those places that are really busy and kind of those peak quick service restaurants. I would say particularly Magic Kingdom, particularly Galaxy's Edge in Hollywood Studios. Animal Kingdom I don't think is as bad with the peak hours.
I don't think so either.
Satuli might be, but
it wasn't when we were there.
But that was still lower crowd numbers and all of that. Yeah. So I don't want to count that, but you have to plan ahead for that. So kind of knowing, okay, I'm planning, we're getting ready to leave in a week. What snacks am I bringing? Mm-hmm. Right? How are we doing that? Are we doing breakfast? Like are we eating breakfast in the resort? Am I bringing a couple boxes of Pop-Tarts? Am I having something Amazon Prime pantry to my resort? Mm-hmm. So thinking through all of that, depending on your kids' taste buds, we have a picky eater in our household. Like, what are you bringing with you, right? You've got to think about packing. You've got to think about different clothes that you're wearing. Are you bringing ponchos? Are you going to buy ponchos there if you're going to need them, depending on what the weather outlook is? Having those couple different kinds of shoes for everybody.
Yeah.
Some solid sandals or Crocs, solid tennis shoe.
Yep.
Being able to change those out, and, shorts, depending on the time of year. Again, fall. Probably going to want a jacket or a sweatshirt or something for the evenings or first thing in the morning.
Yep. The weather's a big deal. That's something you definitely have to look at before you start packing. And it's like, with us, how we like to go in the fall, it's some days you can get away with shorts, some days not so much.
Yeah.
It can be kind of tricky with that weather. I mean, it's a good thing about summer is, you're just you're going to be dressing as cool as possible.
Right. But then at the same time, I am the person who still has to bring some sort of sweater or jacket or something with me and stick it in my bag, because I walk into some place that has the air conditioning blasting and I am freezing my butt off.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's some of that, happening. Mm-hmm. So now you've got to pack. You've got to figure out all the things for packing. Do you have your magic bands? That is one thing that has changed.
Yep.
Is that you no longer get magic bands for staying on property, just the free solid color ones. It used to be that you could get the free solid color ones if you were staying on property.
Right.
And then if you wanted the upgraded ones that they were offering at that time for that resort, you could pay the little bit of extra for those.
Yep.
Now you're paying for all of them if you want them. If you already have a magic band, is it charged? Do you have the app? Do you have...
Right. And if you don't want to use your magic band anymore, you don't have to. No, you can use your phone.
You can use your phone. You can actually use your, if you have an Apple phone, you can add it to your Apple Watch, or add it to your Apple,
you can.
Apple Pay or something. Like, you can add it to something else, which is really nice. We are not Apple people. We are Android people. So you've got all of these decisions to make with that.
And then you also got to be thinking about what are must-do rides for everybody.
Yeah.
Because if crowds are bad, those must-do rides, I mean, you want to make sure you hit those.
So that is one thing that has really, really changed in the last couple of years versus the 10 years prior to COVID and the whole FastPass situation. Disney's needed for a long time to figure out a different solution for this. However, they basically had a virtual queue going with the previous FastPass system.
Right.
Now we're looking at how Disneyland Paris implemented a FastPass pay-as-you-go system.
Yep.
And honestly feels ridiculous to me. I do not think for 1 second that this is going to fly here, but that's something to be looking at and keeping an eye out for. If you are planning a vacation in the next year or two, is that changing with FastPass? So right now, there is no FastPass line. Several rides have brought back single rider lines. Mm-hmm. So if you are a single rider or there's only one person in your party who wants to ride that ride, highly suggest single rider line if it's available.
Right.
But those lines, those wait times are twice what some of them were before.
Right. And one thing that I figured out just over this last week or so, I knew that the wait times on the My Disney Experience app a lot of times are inflated.
Yes.
And it's a good way for them to kind of control where the crowd's going to go. Because people are like, oh, I don't want to wait 80 minutes for Tower of Terror. Mm-hmm. They can kind of control where the crowds are at. Go to Touring Plans and download their program, their app, and it gives you a more real time of what it's going to take.
Right, because those are not trying to...
Right.
You know, those aren't looking at the crowd control aspect. Those are simply looking at point A to point B. Right. How long did it take you?
Yeah. Their goal is to be as accurate as possible. Disney's goal is to, okay, let's get a little close if we can, but also let's try and control the crowd.
My Disney Experience app, that is an estimate. A lot of the vloggers have found that the wait times often say, well, it says in 65-minute wait. Let's see how long it actually takes me. And it ends up being 45 or 50 instead of 60.
Yeah.
And, it makes a big difference.
Mm-hmm. It does. And Touring Plans has taken thousands and thousands, like hundreds of thousands of times throughout the day to try and give you the most accurate time. And they seem to be on it and seem to be doing a pretty good job, which is something I'm looking forward to kind of trying the next time we go down. And then speaking of rides, and you also have to come up with a plan of how are we going to try and get boarding groups to Rise if Rise of the Resistance is something you want to do.
Right.
Are we all getting up? We all trying to get it? How are we going to do it? And then, if we don't get it, are we going to switch parks that day?
Right.
We got to figure out what the plan's going to be. That 7 a.m. one is still a tough one to get. It's still going out in seconds.
Yeah, and we've talked about this. There has to be a better way. Even if that means that, hey, if you're staying on property, you automatically are guaranteed one, just one ride on Rise. But there has to be some sort of advantage to that. But there are literally, so I think we've probably scared a lot of people off. They're like, nope, I'm not doing it. I'm not going back to Disney right now. Screw it. I don't want to deal with all of this. Disney is still planning on coming out with the Disney Genie,
right,
which will essentially replace My Disney Experience, it'll take what's in My Disney Experience and turn it into this Disney Genie, which is going to help you plan
your day. Like if you have little girls and you really want to get the full princess experience, or you have adventurers, or they're going to try and get that trip detailed towards you the best way possible, and also so that they can control the crowd.
Yes.
And it's a win-win for them too. They get to control the crowds to know how much merchandise and food they need in certain areas. It's something that's going to help them out as well with controlling the crowds, and also hopefully help you plan this thing out.
Right. And I think that works really well for somebody who has no idea what they want to do.
Right.
I think it's really helpful for somebody who's never been, who really doesn't know what the next best thing is, who's not been doing a bunch of research, who's not been following all the vlogs, all the podcasters, and like finding out different options. However, I am really not a huge fan of it in general. As much as all of this gives me anxiety paralysis, if you break it down into baby steps, and again, if you utilize using a Disney travel planner, whether that's somebody local to you, or you also just use the travel planners, through Disney, through their travel, you have people who can help you.
Right.
Right. You have options. You have ways to be able to figure some of this stuff out, break it down into baby steps.
Yeah.
Biggest things are like figuring out that budget and what big things you're like, yes, this is a must do for me.
Right.
It is possible.
I think with Genie, like, I want to learn more about it. Like, we've gotten little glimpses of it and what it could possibly do. It was supposed to be out this last year. It kind of keeps getting pushed back along with everything else. Hopefully when it comes out, we're like, wow, this is really going to be useful, easy to use. It's really going to help us plan our day. But at the same time, there's a good chance it's also going to cause more decisions that we're going to have to make. But hopefully it gives you suggestions to help make those decisions easier.
Yeah, that is the hope. Right now, it just feels like AI and crowd control. And that scares me a little bit. And again, we have a really good understanding of like, these are things we want to skip. These are things that will not benefit our family. Right. And it's hard for me to think about the AI aspect, planning stuff out for me in terms of like not knowing us on a human level and not knowing what would be really beneficial to us. Like, you can tell it your interests and, and maybe some things that you would be interested in doing. And yes, it will help you plan that out as far as like the timeline aspect.
Right.
I just can't see it planning out our actual like days as far as like, here's what you should do next. Hey, I really think you should go ride this ride. You should really go ride a Small World. No.
And I think maybe there'll be something in there for the people who are more advanced in planning out their day and like know more about it, and then those who just look at it and go, I really don't know what to do, I'm going to wing it, and because winging it days are kind of gone, unfortunately.
Yeah, and that it does, and I'm going to miss it, and I think that this is going to cause people to brush off it being worth spending the money on going and worth the experience. That's one aspect that I think that Disney has gotten wrong in, as Joe Rohde says, lists like just asking the people what they want and giving them what they want. Like, this is going to be something that you're going to have a lot of people who are going to go, you know what? I think I'd rather just go to the beach for a couple of days. Or I think I'd rather just go to Silver Dollar City or, a different, like a Cedar Fair amusement park or, something else that's smaller because I don't want to deal with having to plan all of this and
pay a premium.
And pay the premium. That is the biggest aspect of it. And it's becoming harder and harder to be like, yes, it's worth it. Yes, it's worth it. Yes, it's worth it. Because we have experienced it being worth it. And so I don't know.
Yeah. And I think one of the last things you really have to kind of plan for, even before you get there, is souvenirs. Like, are we getting souvenirs? How big of souvenirs are we getting? Like, how many souvenirs are we getting? Am I going to have to bring a separate bag down just for souvenirs? So that's something you have to kind of think about that none of us typically think of on our way down there, because we're really focused on just going, not necessarily on our way back, are we going to have room for everything?
It is. And that's something that we deal with every time of like trying to, when I'm trying to pack, I'm like, wait,
we gotta leave room for our mugs.
Yeah. And I do think that it'll come back where you can ship more stuff home and you can handle stuff better. I think that will come back. Mm-hmm. But yeah, right now you kind of almost have to plan for taking an empty suitcase.
Right. So
or duffel of some kind.
Right. So I would say if any of you have any questions about planning your trip, about maybe some of the steps you would take, and you don't know a Disney planner, feel free to hit us up on Twitter or Instagram.
Absolutely.
At Salute to the Ears. We will help out however we can. We can probably even point you in the direction of our favorite Disney planner.
We sure can.
And they can help you out. And if you didn't know, you don't pay the Disney planner anything.
Right.
It's $0 out of your pocket. They're getting paid by Disney.
Yeah.
That's one big bonus of letting them do it. Let them sit on the phone for an hour waiting for
Right.
For
Let
help.
them get up at 6 a.m. and book your dining reservations instead of you.
Right. But if you have any questions, please feel free to ask us on Twitter and Instagram. If you're not already following us, it's Salute to the Ears. And you can also listen to this podcast pretty much anywhere where you download podcasts at this point. Please share it. Tell your friends about us. Help us grow this thing. And with that, please go out and find your joy.
Have a magical week.